Welcome to another edition of Matters, an audio publication of PSC.
Hello, everyone.
I'm thrilled that we're going to do this topic today because it's something that people have been requesting a long time, something that I enjoy every time I hear Steve give this message. So I won't be doing as much talking as much as enjoying him give this message to you. I'll be interjecting questions here and there. But this is a topic that I think, honey, you're an expert on.
Well, we'll see. Expert's a pretty big term. I'll share with you what I believe, and that's my commitment. My commitment is that this topic, in my mind, I kind of file it under, is the grass really greener? And why I think about this is that a lot of times in the years that I've been in the business, I've had stylists come up to me, and sometimes they'll start with, oh my God, I've got to get out of this place. I've got to go to another salon. I've got to get out of here. The owner doesn't advertise. The owner doesn't this. The owner doesn't that. The owner doesn't this. Can you help me? Can you find someplace for me? And more times than not, that happens in the early part of the year. And I think it's natural. I think that just as winter drags on, I think sometimes we drag on in our thoughts of, am I in the right place? Is this where I'm supposed to be? And it's why I will put it under, is the grass really greener, and complete the phrase with somewhere else.
Well, and also, as an owner, we both know we value our staff. And anytime we lose someone, it's a personal blow to us.
Sure.
Because we invest in them, we care for them. Small business does create a family environment. So what we would encourage you to do, if you are feeling that you're questioning where you're working, take the owner to lunch and be absolutely honest why you're questioning your fit at that location.
Kind of how to think about this, I think, is that start by making a list. Make a list, and you've got to be really honest. And you know what? Sometimes if you get in kind of a bad mood, you can say, well, I don't like anything about anything. That's why I'm thinking about leaving. What are you talking about? And I'll always ask the phrase, if there was something you liked about the salon, if there was something you liked about where you work or who you work for, what would it be? And it's amazing. I've had people that are absolutely dead serious negative about everything they work for. And if I ask them the question, if there was something you liked, what would it be? They always have an answer. There's always an answer. And so make an honest list of what you like about where you're at. Then make an honest list of what you don't like about right next to it. What is it that's in the way? What do you think is in the way of you being totally successful? And at the same time, I want you to make a list of, if you did start over somewhere else, what do you think it would take? What kind of effort? What kind of hours? What kind of starting from scratch would it take? Learning a whole new staff, having a front desk learn you learning the front desk, and vice versa, so that they would know how to schedule you. Working in a new pricing structure, working with new assistants or cleansing technicians.
Product formulas and
all
mixes.
of those things. Maybe even working with a new color line or working with a new product brand that you have to learn and recommend. What if you left the industry entirely and started in a whole new profession? What kind of energy and effort would that take? And I want you to be very detailed about it. What kind of effort? How many hours would it take? How many hours of study? How many months before the job paid off? If not years before the job paid off. And then I want you to look back and say, I'm thinking about leaving. And if I leave, I've got to put this kind of energy and effort into something new. If I put that kind of effort where I'm at right now,
what could the results be?
How incredible would the results be? Because of what I already know where I'm at. Because the learning curve is so different. It's the effort curve. It's the amount of me that maybe sometimes when you start to feel negative about things, it's natural to hold back. How much of you are you holding back from the salon that you work in right now? How much of your effort? Because I've found that people like to say, well, I could have been successful there, but it just wasn't worth the effort. When people walk away from something they failed, they always want to walk away saying, I could have done that. I just chose not to. And I guess my thought to you is, why not be all out? Be full out for where you're at. Take that out for a spin and know, at the very worst, you'll learn your limits. You'll learn what full out is for you. You'll learn what it feels like. You'll learn what it feels like to risk and to be vulnerable. You'll learn what it feels like to succeed. You'll learn what it feels like to fail and have to get back up again. And most of the time, success is right where you're at. There are very few times that you have to move somewhere else to be successful. Very, very few. Most of those people that I've seen over the years that came to me and were desperate and had to go somewhere else and wound up going somewhere else weren't any happier where they went.
Because they took them with them.
Exactly. Because wherever you go, you take you with. And so why not work on you? We say all the time, when you're at work, either work on your work or work on you. Why not take this opportunity to work on you? But first, let's really look at, is the grass greener somewhere else? There's a portion of our industry right now that really is trying to sell the idea of single chair independent salon, or in some places they call it booth rent. I want to tell you that in my years of this business, I've never ever seen someone where I looked at their numbers when they were in a full service, when they were in a great commission-run salon. I've never seen someone do better leaving a well-run commission salon and going to booth rent or independent chair salon. Ever have I seen it?
That's gonna offend some people.
Well, and it's the last thing I want to do. I would rather have it be informing some people.
Right.
I'd rather inform so that people don't have to go down that slippery slope. Because when you work in a great, well-run commission salon and you go to an independent single-chair salon, boy, oh boy, if you're not really ready to be a salon owner, you're going to go backwards. Your service is going to go backwards. Your income is going to go backwards. Your disciplines are going to go backwards.
What you can offer the customer is less. Your menu options for your customer is depleted. You don't realize how much is really provided for you.
Well, and therein lies the lure of booth rent, that you pay your rent and you keep it all.
Right.
So, again, whatever that rent is, you pay your weekly rent and you keep the rest. And I've got to tell you that is absolutely, unequivocally false. That's not the truth. If the opposite of truth for you is lying, that's a lie. Again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be blunt, but it's the truth that no one pays their rent and keeps it all. Because once you become an independent single-chair salon, not only do you pay your rent, but you have to pay for your products that are used in the salon, all the hair color, all the developers. You're the one that has to worry if there's 6N for Mrs. Jones, who's coming in at 10 o'clock this morning. Do you know that the number one person that shops at a beauty store is a booth renter, is an independent single-chair salon who on their way to work stops by to get their products for that day? Because for the most part, they're hand-to-mouth. As far as I make the money yesterday, I buy my products this morning, and I take it and I use it today on that client, on that guest. So whether or not you have product to use, whether or not you have product to sell, all of that is on your shoulders. So what that means is that now you have to provide time in your week to meet with at least one, but probably 5 or 6 different salespeople, consultants from the various companies, to order and buy the product that you need to use in the salon. Because you are a working single-chair salon owner, you have to take time away from your customer list in order to meet with these people, or you have to do business over the top of a customer. And when you do business over the top of a customer, they're not getting your full attention, and so the service level slips. If you're in a full service commission salon and you're used to working with assistants or cleansing technicians, or you have a wash house and people are treated to an awesome wash house experience, it's harder to do that in a single chair location.
Not to mention now, how does a guest schedule an appointment?
Exactly. In many cases, each individual stylist has their own phone line and you're answering phone calls as they come in. Or if you're not answering phone calls, you've hired your own receptionist, which where do the revenues come from to pay the receptionist? And how are they paid, and the taxes and everything else that goes for having an employee. You've also got insurance that needs to be had, both for your equipment as well as any malpractice, as well as for your health insurance and things of that nature, that is coming out of your income, so to speak. All that money that you were supposed to get to keep is coming out of all of that. What about towels or towel service?
Laundry service.
Yeah, laundry service, things of that nature. The other key thing in this is that most people leave a commission-based salon and go to a single-chair independent salon to have more independence. And so what typically happens is the person adjusts their hours because they're their own boss. And I hated working Thursday nights, so I'm not going to work Thursday nights anymore. I hated having to come in on Mondays, so I'm not working Mondays anymore. I hated the early mornings, so I'm going to start at noon. Whatever the case may be, when you cut back your hours, many times you're also cutting back your clients, your guest list. The other thing is that industry statistics prove that when a stylist leaves one salon and goes to another, typically what happens, there are exceptions to this, but typically what happens is that 50% of those clients leave both the stylist and the salon previously. The other 50% are split equally. 25% follow the stylist and 25% stay in the salon that the stylist left. And all that is that when you leave one place and go to another, it's a breach in service to that guest.
Well, a lot of customers, me included, I want to be in an environment where there's many options for me.
Mm-hmm. And so you have that to contend with, the fact that now you're on your own and you have all of these new things to think about. How do I have product and color and take-home product, and how do I have time to meet with all these salespeople and stop by a beauty store and meet with an insurance person, and I've got to have a bank account now, and I've got to balance my checkbook now for my business side of the bank, and I've got to make sure that I've got change to make change for customers, and am I going to accept credit cards? And if I accept credit cards, what have I got to do to set up that system here in the salon? It's a lot to do for a single chair. And that's why we're saying I've never seen someone go from a well-run commission-based salon to an independent single-chair salon and do better financially. Usually, the edge is off. I've had many single-chair independent salon owners come up to me and say, I've lost a little bit of my edge creatively. As much as I fought going to the staff meetings and going to the education that was in the salon, and as much as I didn't like some of what happened there, what I really liked was how the other people I worked with stimulated my creativity.
And forced me to be current.
Yes. And that's something. Can it happen in a single chair independent salon? It can happen, but it's not conducive to it.
Mm-hmm.
Can education and advanced training be forgotten? It's not forgotten all the time, but it can be forgotten.
Well, and it's not as easy for a distributor to provide education for one individual.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to seek out that education versus having it readily available to you.
So, on one sense, when we look at this, is the grass really greener? I personally feel that it's not greener on the independent side, independent single chair side. Now, is there someone listening that's the exception to that rule? More than likely there is. And if you have addressed all of those challenges and you've fought through all of those things and you've found a way to make this move as an independent single chair salon successful for you, my hat's off and more power to you. And I'm really happy for you. At the same time, the majority of salon stylists, of service providers in the salon industry would not be able to make that transition. And what I've seen happen more times than not, the great stylist that was working in a well-run commission salon, when they fail as an independent single chair salon, they don't go back to the salon they came from. Many times they leave the industry altogether.
Mm-hmm.
So to some degree,
we lose them.
As an industry professional, we've got a vested interest in this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the idea of losing talented people because they made a decision that wasn't in their favor, failed at it, and then didn't wind up re-immersed in another well-run commission salon. So I guess the challenge that's out there is if you're feeling that little, there's an interesting quote that says that stress is just nothing more than change trying to take place. Stress means change something. If you're feeling that uneasiness or that stress about where you are or what you've become, you've got to look inside to say, what's the change that I'm being called to? Is it a change in my effort? Is it a change in my attitude? Is it a change in my willingness to learn and be open to what's happening in my professional life right now? Is it that I am mired in the status quo? Do I need to do something that rocks my world professionally? Whether that means take that class that you really have been putting off, whether it be an immersion class with Sassoon or whether it be an immersion class at the Cromines Academy or at one of the Paul Mitchell schools in their advanced, whether it be core cutting or adaptive cutting, whether it be some of the great hairdressers that PSC brings into our space locations. Find a way to do something that rocks your world. More than likely, that uneasiness isn't an uneasiness that says, leave the salon. There's that old phrase that says, bloom where you're planted. There's a great monthly calendar book that came out that Behind the Chair did as a fundraiser for Katrina. And the whole theme of it is be the change. All of these great artists are wearing T-shirts that say be the change, and then they've got their favorite quote on each page of the book. And what I like about it is it's the right message. You be the change. Be the change doesn't mean change the page or change the salon. It means you be the change in your salon. If there are legitimate things about your salon that aren't working, you can be the change through leadership, through passion, through belief, through follow-through, through meeting with your owner. I would much rather have an employee, a staff member, a teammate be passionate about a change that they see in our company or that they see that our company needs to make and be willing to, by their being in front of me fighting for it, they're fighting for our company together. They're not saying, the heck with you, I'm out of here. Being the change inspires people. One of the other areas that's probably more serious than I want to be during this part of the message is what I see happen so frequently when people become an independent single-chair salon owner. The first time that the quarterly estimated income tax is due, and because that person came from a commission-based salon where taxes were automatically filed, where the matching Social Security was automatically done by the owner, now the independent single-chair salon owner is the owner. That first quarterly installment is a moment of truth. It's a moment of truth that you haven't prepared for in most cases. And the idea of coming up with a substantial sum of money to pay in to income taxes, since it wasn't planned for, many times it's not done. And so the asterisk that I put on where I said I've never seen someone do better when they left a well-run commission salon and became a single-chair independent salon, the only way I've ever seen them do better is when they made the unfortunate choice to not be honest about their income and to not file those quarterly estimates and not pay and state their income properly. The sad part is that I've usually encountered those people further on down the road when they try and buy a home or they try and finance a car or they try and finance a new salon that they're going to run and invite other stylists to be a multi-station salon. And because they didn't state their income properly on their taxes, they don't have a borrowing base a basis for borrowing the money to do the things that they want to do. And it's one of those things that integrity in business is everything. Integrity as a human being, as a professional, is everything. And if ever you're going to make the transition, you have to prepare for it, and you have to say, heads up, you're going to be honest with what you report to the government. And in doing that, you're probably not going to be better off than you were in an independent, well-run commissioned salon. And so it's something to think about. I'm okay if everybody goes at this business eyes wide open, knowing what the choices are and making an honest evaluation. Most of the time, there's not enough information to make a great, honest evaluation so that you know you're making the right move for your career. So that's all we would ask is do your homework, look at it, make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. Invite your current owner to do some of the math with you and show you what your income really is when you add the matched taxes and the benefits and things that are available to you working under their roof as compared to leaving and having to fund it all yourself in an independent single-chair salon.
Talk about client lists, and whose is it really?
Well, there's a lot of gray area on client lists. But to me, that's also black and white, honestly. I think that a client list that's developed while you're working in someone's business is a client list that belongs to the owner whose business it was. When a stylist chooses to leave, they leave with all of the ability and what they've become as a stylist, but they leave the way they came in most cases, with no customers.
Well, and even if they look at it, I mean, we've had people say, look, when I came to the salon, I brought a client list. Well, that's very debatable because the salon owner created a wonderful environment where those clients were willing to follow. So really, that owner was part of you retraining that customer base. At the same time, how many customers came in as a result of this new business that you were working in? So I believe very strongly in this too. And I know our listeners are going to say, my owner had nothing to do with my client base. I created all of it because of me, just me. And if you interview the customer, they're going to say, perhaps that too, but all the extras that made that service experience enjoyable for them is one of the reasons you maintain them as a guest or attracted them as a new guest.
So that, again, I think you know where we stand on this and would be happy to, hopefully as our paths cross in the future in this business, I'd love to expand on this further. But we've shared what we believe in here. I think that in most cases, work to become the best you where you're at, as long as where you're at is ethical and above board and interested in you, which I'm sure if you're working in a well-run commission-based salon, I'm sure they are. So anyway, I think that where my mind is going right now is how do we plan and prepare to be the best us? What are the elements that fall into place? And I think that in my mind, the elements that fall into place are breaking your life down into various areas, whether it be the professional side of you, the social side of you, the spiritual side of you, the physical side of you, and planning in each one of those areas to bring out the best you in each area. What are some of your goals for those areas? And a goal is nothing more than, they say, a dream with a deadline. A goal isn't just a dream. It's not just a, boy, I'd like to be, or I want to be, or someday I will be. A goal isn't a goal until you put a deadline to it and a date. And I think that if we're not willing to put our dreams and our goals down on paper, then you're going to be looking, for the most part, to somebody else to constantly make you happy. Somebody else's responsibility is going to be to make you happy. Because you won't have developed a system in your life to dream and achieve. And in achieving, it's kind of like driving down the road. Well-set goals is like starting out in Chicago and winding up in New York City. You couldn't see all the way to New York when you left Chicago. You could only see as far down the road as you could. But once
you knew you were going to
there,
get there.
You knew you were going to get there. You had a plan to get there. You'd made provisions for it, but you could only see to the horizon. But once you got there, you could see that much further.
Right.
And that's what properly set and maintained goals allow you to do. It's belief in you. It's belief in your future. But you've got to have those goals in all different areas of your life. Luck is when opportunity meets preparedness. And I can tell you that we're all very, very lucky today to have with us on this recording for the first ever guest appearance on Matters, an industry icon, someone that we admire more than we can say, someone who is a artistic director of the greatest company in the beauty industry, someone who is the platform artist of choice by BehindTheChair.com time and time again, voted by you, the hairdressers, somebody who owns a phenomenal school and also just happens to own what we would consider an extremely well-run commission-based salon. Please welcome Robert Cromeans.
Well, it's first of all, what an honor
to be the first all ours.
To be the first guest.
Yes,
I feel like we're making our own television now. It's the new Oprah. We got it going on.
Yes,
Oprah started somewhere, didn't she?
Absolutely. I've been a commission owner for many, many years, so I have a lot of things I really believe in. I'm a career path-driven company. I think most people from our industry serve themselves the best when they're part of something. I always reflect on my relationship with John Paul and Paul Mitchell, the company. They made me the guy I am. The affiliation, being on their bus has been one of the greatest tools. So when people look at me as a company owner, I'm the bus and the vehicle I want to show them, being part of something. I see independent workers every day that the lights are out, that suddenly they have no passion in their eyes. They're isolated. They're like in purgatory. They're stuck in a place and they're starving and thirsting and wanting these things that exist in industry, but they've alienated themselves beyond touch. Mm-hmm. So, I see an industry, I understand where it comes from. I obviously believe that having a vision in my company, I want the people to behave a certain way. We have dress codes and rules, but there's such benefit to these rules. I talk a lot of times at seminars that if I was an independent contractor, I'd have probably been the worst hairdresser in the world, because if it was left up to my motivation, I would have been walking in at 3 p.m. I'd say, mark me in for an hour. That would be it. I'd have been surfing USA. I'd have been having a great lifestyle, but my wife would have divorced me by now. She had other ideas. Now, one of the things I realized really early in my career that my wife ran the desk for a while. It was through her seeing what I was capable of. It was through her vision of what could be done. I think most of us are doing better for ourselves having people looking after us.
Well, you are what you're surrounded by.
Absolutely. So when I look at kids handling money, I think hairdressers as a rule, we're not very good at handling money. Here you are in a situation. I looked at a salon a couple of years ago I was going to buy out, and they happened to be a booth rent salon before they were going through this bankruptcy. And all the stations had little cards on it saying, we can no longer take your credit cards. You got to pay me cash. And I think about it in a normal world of how uncomfortable it is for us to deal with money on a general basis. And the first thing you see in the mirror isn't your pretty highlights. It's these crazy money messages that are telling you how independent they are and how there's no trust at the desk. So make sure you give your tip to me because the people at the desk may not give it to me.
Ooh.
I mean, as an industry guy that really believes in industry entirely, I've got to say that I see there's a crime committed there. Anybody that loses their passion, having endured a year of beauty school, I have something to say about it. I really care that they get the career we promised them. So
you've lost people to booth rental.
Absolutely.
Have they come out on the other side better for that?
Without a doubt. No, I'll just give you a little foundation. Both of my major success stories, San Diego and Las Vegas, both exist in a 98% booth rent town. So the fact that we've built an incredible commission salon there is just, wow, it's got to be the hardest place.
Well, hats off to you and your organization.
But when I look at kids later down the track and seeing people that have made that jump, they've kind of isolated themselves. They start losing the benefit, which is walk-in traffic, the kind of group sport of it all. I talk a lot about church. It's the community of getting together often, and that's sometimes where they really make bad choices. One situation, I had a girl that just reapplied to come back. And 2 or 3 years later, she had pretty much burned out her clientele list, was getting no new traffic, and pretty much, the claim of independence, that's what they're after. I want independence. You take a train off the track, it goes nowhere. If companies like mine are so appealing because the number one thing they want to get out of me is education, there's so many other reasons people have to look at. And I think when you said make a list, I really encourage all of you listening to this tape to put a list down. And if there's some things you find yourself wanting from your commission owner. I think it's the honest conversation is what is expected. Only time my heart gets hurt is when people make a jump without discussing it with me.
Right.
Because I would love to give them a little viewpoint from what I see of what they're about to step into.
The thing that I get so excited about really is to stand on the sideline and watch great visionaries that open salons and that understand that there has to be career path. There has to be leadership, and there has to be somebody who's the keeper of the vision. Not everybody in life is capable really of keeping the vision for a outstanding, extraordinary salon. And when you have the opportunity, most people that I've met want to belong to something. They want to stand for something. In business, they say that there's more people with money than there is ideas. And so the money people gravitate toward the people who have ideas that can make more money.
Mm-hmm.
There are more people who are capable of being great hairdressers than there are people who are capable of being great salon owners. And so it gives an opportunity to join and be a part of their dream. Robert, when you said that you don't see yourself as the boss, you see yourself as the bus. Being the vehicle to help people's dreams come true in the beauty industry. We believe that people are paid for their knowledge in beauty. We also believe that you start exactly from where you're at, with who you are and what you have, and if you will see what's great around you, you can thrive in the business of beauty. You can thrive in a salon. And so when you say, Robert, and you went over it so fast, but it's so special at what you have career path for your staff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, was that something that was just natural? Was that something that you knew you had to have? Or when did it really occur to you that...
When you and Terry told me I should have. That's when it hit me. I know, but we've always... See, I think what's great about having you guys as a coach is you recognize things in my business that perhaps we don't identify as a system, but truly is. We've had fluctuating prices. We've got different levels. We hadn't identified it and made the connection. It was a career path.
Well, you know, one of the things, Robert, that I think back to is the story of really how the wash house began.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, would that have ever happened in anything other than a well-run, commission-based salon?
No way.
The whole idea of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember you talked about how your staff was challenging each other to create better and better and better service, to create more and more at the shampoo bowl, to take a part of the beauty industry that when people run behind, they rush through that, and you made it the centerpiece of your business.
I would imagine it would be impossible to create, because the thing I love about being a commission owner is I'm in charge, and I make this statement, I don't mean it bad. In my salon, it's not a democracy, it's a communist country. I mean, and you love a lot of lines, but this is the one you're going to use. This is the one you're going to love here. And no stylist from out of town would ever hold me hostage. Well, I need to have this line or that line. Dress code, there's certain principles I'm not going to buckle on. Our agreement, we're going to be on time every time, that we're going to be consistent service providers. People don't feel systems do. When I look objectively as a coach to an industry and I look at a typical booth rent salon, I see some major flaws. Taxation, you guys touched on it.
Mm-hmm.
A few years ago, I told a great story about Paul and Jeannie. Jean Bra, the legendary artist, best female hairdresser I've ever seen, was telling a story to Paul Mitchell, the man, and says, I'm so excited. This year at tax time, I'm getting a tax rebate of $15,000. And Jeannie's, real happy about it. And Paul says, well, Jean, I'm excited too. It's tax time. He said, I've got to pay $1 million. And Jeannie says, well, I may be a blonde, but I'm getting $15,000 back, and you got to pay $1 million. How can you be happier than me? He said, Jean, do you know how much money you have to make to pay $1 million in taxes? And that day I fell in love with paying taxes. We had a salon that was doing $100,000 a year. We weren't paying any taxes on that. My wife called one day crying on the phone, said, we just got a tax bill in for $80,000. I said, Yahoo! We must have made 200 and thousand, whatever it is. I get excited about it. I've seen guys in my town that drive the same shabby car, Toyota from 73, because the money that he's hiding under his mattress, he can never go to the BMW dealership and buy the car. Because if he pulls out the cash, the IRS are going to want to know. If he shows his tax return, it's dismal. When I bought a $1.5 million house in San Diego, the only reason it was possible because I'm an honest guy, an honest engine, and I pay taxes. And because I paid taxes and I was so devoted to what that meant, suddenly I had an opportunity to buy the house of my dreams. So there's certain benefit. It's beyond just the location. much like you lose clientele, faces change within the environment of a salon. So suddenly you're like, I'll never get on with this guy. It's never going to work. And suddenly the environment changes and shifts to suddenly you've got colleagues there that it's all working. There's an evolution here. But when you say put a list down, there's so many ways you've got to look at it. Being handled from a financial point of view is one of the greatest gifts you get. Mm-hmm. Having somebody take care of your taxes and all these sort of things that would generally, traditionally, and I'm not casting judgment on my industry, we're not very good at. We're not the best at these types of things. And I think if it was left up to me to get my medical insurance and, all these things that you're supposed to do to be legal, I think there's just a lot of complications. We're getting into an avenue of business that none of us really wanted to inherit.
All three of us, let's think about this. We've had many occasions to speak in front of stylists. And what do the faces look like of people when we talk to stylists about numbers?
Blank stares.
Are numbers people's favorite part?
Absolutely not.
Doing the math, keeping score. Generally, people don't like to keep score. Generally, would you say it makes people more creative or less creative?
Less creative.
So when you kind of...
Am I the only one answering here?
When you superimpose...
I put a little in there.
When you superimpose that on what we're talking about here, all of a sudden, people who aren't real favorable on keeping score are put in a position where they have to be the scorekeeper. And
they don't do it, Steve. That's the whole point.
People who fell in love with the creative side of this business. You see, what's the luxury of somebody coming to work, Robert, in your salon is that you've done everything. Your staff has done
they can ride
everything.
On the shirt tails of everyone else.
They come in almost like a platform artist out of town, right? They come in and they get to do hair all day long in a creative environment where the person next to them is spurring them on, is challenging them from not only from an artistic standpoint, but from a service standpoint. And there are assistants there to work with them. There are more eyes looking at the guest.
Well, just look at this viewpoint, too. In a well-run, high-traffic commission salon, you're almost witnessing a parade every day. A parade of traffic, celebration. And when you think about booth runners, God bless them, but there is no parade. There is no excitement. And it becomes a very mundane environment.
Well, again, I don't know if we said this already. That is painting it with a broad stroke. I am certain that there are exceptions to that rule out there in the booth rent environment.
And there always is.
And there always is. Those same people, though, that are exceptions in the booth rent environment would probably thrive in a well-run commission-based salon as well.
Sure.
Because in most cases, it's not just the structure. It's also the person. Mm-hmm. It's what the person brings to the table. And if someone is absolutely dedicated over the top to customer service and to being the best they can be artistically, they're going to do well wherever they go.
Well, a couple of things. Benefit of team. Even in myself as a tired platform artist, going back to my salon, I need the team around me. It's when you're in trouble. It's when you're having the worst day of your life. When you're Helen Keller with a pair of scissors, you just rely on having a guy like Takashi on the back end of the bus that could even up your bob. If you're only as good as the people you hang around, and this is critical, the problem and the challenge you make by surrounding yourself with nobody is you've got nobody to lean on, nobody to improve your game. Because I know cutting hair beside Takashi makes me want to cut hair better. The other thing I want to point fingers at is the energy of a salon. It almost takes traffic to build it. So if you've got other people thinking like you, working a schedule that's, graveyardish, the salon never has energy. It's always got that kind of, like you call lunchtime kind of, bad vibe. Mm-hmm. Like, what's wrong with this place? Why is there nobody here? You guys must suck. That's the impression that gives. So I love the energy that's created by this team feeling and the fact that we can lean on one another and that we're responsible for growing future generations in our culture. So there's a real helping hand attitude. Mm-hmm. And again, I agree with you and concur that there are exceptions to the rule. I have seen a group of organized people that shared a common vision, that made agreements of what the standards were going to be, and they were successful. Not often. You asked me earlier on a question, when I look into my audience's eyes, these booth runners appear in my business classes all the time. And I think what we're telling you here is you're now accountable for your own information. And based on good choices or bad choices, whether you're going to get it, and it's not a dancing boy hair show that's really the advice you need. So when I look at them, sometimes I see the hunger in their eyes. They're looking for something. And the sense that I can tell they're actually wanting to belong to something. but they've made a couple of choices earlier in their lives that's put them in a predicament that I don't think is healthy, not for the constant grooming and taking you to new levels and helping you grow. Who in a booth rent environment is going to turn around and say to you, you're ready for a price increase?
Exactly.
Who's going to tell you these things? Who's, you talk about keeping score. The score they do keep count of is, the dollar amount. Who's going to see that you're doing so many things right that you're ready for that next level?
Sure.
I think that that's one of the things that I really have seen us develop in our own organization, and really recognize what's capable for people and giving them these opportunities. For me, charging $500, everybody in my culture knows one day they can go through processes and hit that target.
Well, also, I think about the inventory levels a booth renter can keep. If you think of and understand the width of the Paul Mitchell line, they're not going to stock every SKU. So therefore, they're limiting their creativity and their customers' options. And that's dangerous too.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I wanted to say, Robert, when I was listening to you talk is that just as there's nobody there to really tell you it's time to raise prices, there's nobody there to pull you out of a spin either. We've looked at hairdressers' numbers for years and years and years. And invariably, I've got a set of numbers I'm looking at right now. You see great performance, and then you see a day or 2 days or 3 days or a week worth of poor performance. And if nobody's looking at that, where does the spiral stop? And how do we look and say, you know what, if I keep going this way, I am going to diminish my client base. I will not be able to work in the environment that I've chosen. And also, how contagious is that person whose energy and whose efforts and whose service has spiraled downwards? The thing that you talked about, I think, I would categorize as momentum. Tom Peters says, when you walk into a business that's got it, you can feel it, you can smell it, you can taste it, it's there. And no one has to tell you, you just know. And I can honestly say that in my years in this business, I've never walked into an independent chair rental, single salon that had that energy, where I was like, oh my God, I would be serviced here. I want to be serviced here. I want to be part of this. Let me in. Great customer service, great salons. You've got to let the customer into play.
They're contagious.
And that's what I get when I'm in your salons.
Mm-hmm.
I got that in your empty salon that wasn't open for business when I went through it with Dawn last week. It was like, God, I want to get in here. I want to play. I want to be part of this environment, because you can just feel it. And so I think that's what the creative hairdresser is looking for. Someone that I'm studying under, Andy Andrews, right now, one of his decisions for success is that I will choose to be happy. And this is a real challenge for whether you've ever considered booth rent or not. Just where you're at right now, I will choose to be happy. One of the things that I never thought about with that decision is people don't want to be around people who aren't happy. When you choose not to be happy, you limit the people around you that can help you be at your best. Have you ever walked through the salon and you're walking toward the back room and somebody says, oh God, she's back there, don't go? Or you walk through the salon and hope you don't make eye contact with that person because they're having one of their bad days? Or if you start talking to that person, you're going to hear the laundry list of everything that's wrong in their world today, and you want to keep yourself up? Bottom line is if you don't choose to be happy, you're going to limit yourself creatively, you're going to limit your earning power, you're going to limit your future in this business. I think one of the reasons, Robert, people want to be around you so much is, and it's true for Terry and I, because we know there's a twinkle in your eye. We know that your best days are ahead of you in business. We know that you're always dreaming about your future, the industry's future, your hairdresser's future. When we sit and talk in a coaching session or in a brainstorming session, it's all about making things better, stirring up the pot to make things better in a Robert Cromine salon or in the Paul Mitchell world or in the salon industry. And that's contagious. That's worth doing. They say that people will do work that they value and that they see as worthwhile work. And that's more what we've got to be about, I think, in this industry. It's not about the address. It's not about the name on the outside of the building. Is there work that's worthwhile happening inside? Are there people who care? Are there people who are going to make a difference in this business? And that's why we want to hang with you, because you are, and I hope that that's what we stand for in this industry as well.
Well, as a coach, again, from a financial point of view, I think making a decision to rent a chair, just in that, there's a flaw in the system. I see a future of an industry where we're going to have multi-relationships with clients at one time. We're not lens crafters 1 an hour every hour. Stephanie Kolchowski is a great example. She's booking $3,000 a day. She may have at any given time in the salon 6 clients in her location. If Steph was a booth renter, she'd have to rent 6 chairs to be able to perform at the standard she's capable of. The challenge that I see is I feel that, we get crazy on work ethic, but I'm a guy that believes in life. I got 2 little babies, and I think the most important thing is having more time off. What I'm trying to teach my commission-driven staff is to be dangerous at work. Meaning I now have part-time moms working 2 days a week in the salon being more dangerous as performers in 2 days than they ever were in 5. So let's take that to the booth rent management. Who's going to take you on that journey to be more dangerous at work so that you can hit some incredible totals? So instead of doing it over 5 days in little bits, you're dangerous in 2, having 5 days off. So when you look at a Steph's number, I think you're absolutely right, Terry. She's using the wash house, using the system, using the setup that we have, that we understand that in this industry to make a living, you're either going to charge more or do more. Doing more makes the most sense to me because it ties back to that energy. Any given day you walk in, we are buzzing because we're not working on this 1 an hour, every hour concept, which I think is debilitating to the whole industry. And I feel when you rent a chair, you've just pretty much made a bargain there that says, I'm going to limit myself to a 1-client relationship. I'm going to put color on her head and watch it develop.
Well, Robert, you said something the other day that just stopped me in my tracks, and that was when you were showing a picture of the Color Cathedral at the Harbor Salon, and you said that's where we celebrate color. To celebrate, we've got to have people to celebrate with.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine putting the color on one person in this one little area and say, okay, we're celebrating color now. Let's sing a song or blow out the candle or something of that nature. We celebrate because there's 15 or 20 or 30 different people all in that area, all enjoying color, all watching the professional expertise of this staff. That's what creates the energy. And I think that part of the energy in your business is that celebration of beauty, that celebration of professionalism, that celebration of people that love what they do, joining together in a creative sense and making magic happen. And I think that also when you have that kind of environment, it's easier to start at the guest. You do that because you want the guests to have the most enjoyment out of their time at your business, to have that Robert Cromines experience. And that happens when we focus on the guest and retrofit the business to make that guest experience extraordinary.
Well, again, pointing the finger, I've been in booth rent salons where you have a client 3 chairs down. I always say she was on fire. And when you ask one of the hairdresser looked down the line and said, well, she's not with me. Yeah. Meaning there's no honor here. And again, we're not saying every salon. I'm sure there's some people could listen to this tape and be offended. That is not the purpose of this tape. The purpose is to speak some truths here. That's as much as I'm a believer in the industry. When there's crimes committed against the customer, that irks me too because that's our industry's reputation we're foiling with, So it makes a huge difference.
Robert, there's very few great achievements that have happened individually. I don't care what we look at. This week on the news, Kobe Bryant scored 81 points. And the sportscasters are ripping him apart. They're saying that the worst job in basketball right now, actually they said this morning on the radio, the worst job in professional sports is having to be a teammate of Kobe Bryant's. Because you're never going to touch the ball. You'll never get to shoot the ball because Kobe's the one that's going to do that. Well, you know what? Think about that in a salon light. In a salon light, it's hard to perform individually. Take it any which direction you want. When the industry watches you on stage, it's not just Robert. It's Robert and your team. You don't take the stage. I mean, you do when you're talking about business, but rarely in a trade show environment, in an exposition, it's not just Robert. It's a Robert Cromines salon team.
So maybe, and I've done a lot of listening on this CD, maybe some people leave and go to booth rent because they've never been surrounded by the right team that could push them.
Well, Terry, we say all the time that people won't stay working in the salon they're at one day longer than they believe that salon can develop their career. I think the gist of this whole CD is about career development. And it's about recognizing where and how you can be developed, how to be ready to be developed. The old phrase that says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. If you're not being developed where you're at, are you ready to be a student? Are you really ready to be a student and allow someone to craft and encourage and develop your career?
And maybe you've been into a couple salons where the team, the package, wasn't put together right. Maybe another commission salon is worth a try. I mean, we always say booth rent is when you've lost hope. But it's not the last option, and certainly it's not the only option.
Well, booth rent from a salon owner standpoint happens when they've lost hope. Booth rent from a stylist position is when the only thing that they can see in their horizon is money. In other words, if my career's not going to be developed, if I'm not going to have a chance to be a part of something as great as XYZ salon or
so
Robert
I better
Cromine
get as
salon,
much of the dollar as I can.
then I'm going to get as much of the dollar in the days that I have to work and be done with it.
It's Jerry Maguire time, paycheck player.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is they don't realize that the choice they made is actually going to play with their paycheck and start to, decrease the number over time, especially if you end up in a location, because most times I see booth rent owners pick obscure locations. So the easiest way to traffic them is through farming out the chairs. Well, if you end up in a location with no walk-in business and your clientele, you're losing 1 in 5 anyway, work out the math. In 2 years, you're going to have no clients left and no gene pool to create new ones.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about inventory. You talk about in the Paul Mitchell product line, 109, 110 SKUs of liquid line. Let's talk about the color dispensary. I know when I had an independent salon, when I owned my very first salon, I had no money. I was acting like a booth renter. In essence, I was a booth renter in my own store. I'd wrap a perm and run out to the beauty supply at the back door to go buy one. I mean, I wasn't racking and packing inventory that was anyway forward focused on what I wanted my business to be.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about it, and if you've ever went to your color bar, your dispensary, and you're out of something, how frustrating it is. If all you've got is 6 tubes, you're cheating the client, you're cheating yourself. You're making things work. You're making up concoctions that can never be emulated, duplicated, and for most cases, you would never want to, working off such a small little paint palette. The thing I love about being part of it is you have an incredible toolbar, if you will, of all these great ways you can make color happen, from ink to overlays of shines. If you're working off your own budget and you don't see the value of investing in that, which is often the case, then I think you're cheating your customer.
Absolutely.
Your customer deserves more.
And they'll figure it out.
Within a period of time, they're going to see something down the street and go, this seems like a better fit for me, because this is not the fit. We know it's not right.
I think about sometimes a talk that I heard once that said that some of you are interested in this business and some of you are committed. What does interested mean versus committed relative to this topic? I think that the nature of independent single chair salon, think of the way that the rent is done. Most of the time you hear either a daily or a weekly rent. Rarely do you hear a monthly rent. You never hear annual rent, right? It's so many dollars per day or per week. What's the vision of that? How short-term, how short-sighted really is that? Is that someone who's interested in beauty, or is that someone who's committed to beauty? And again, please know there's exceptions, but when I think about this and say, okay, what does commitment mean? When your investment in a single chair independent salon is less than what it would cost for a weekend away in a big city, that's your whole investment in the business, how can we really call that committed? When I look at a Robert Cromine salon, there's an obvious commitment to beauty. There's an obvious commitment to the guest. And there's an obvious commitment to the team that works there. And that says long term. In all the conversations that we've had about the business or about Robert, your salons in general, it's never been, what's your rent for the week? It just has never been that. And that's so different.
We brought this up at the seminar. If I was to take my Vegas salon as an example, and I think a lot of you listening know what I look like. If I was renting space there, I would want $1,000 a week minimum.
Minimum, sure.
Meaning that there's so many things my business offers, meaning from the use of assistant power that can help you be dangerous at work, from the zhuzhy little details, from the location, from the blow dryer that retracts from heaven, all these little add-ons. And in fact, an average kid in my salon can expect $3,000 income weeks starting off first week on the floor. I think we got to change value. We talk about this sometimes, that booth renting, in my opinion, is a manifestation of sometimes poor commission management. So that certain people do jump off out of desperation. I think your advice is great, because there's got to be a salon out there for you. And I think if you really look honestly at our industry, sometimes we're too hasty to make decisions.
Yeah, do your homework.
Because somebody asks you, you want to work here, it's like a date in a bar. You don't date any schmo that gives you an asking card. You know, you have a little patience here. I would sometimes say to people, you know, how many people, you know, you're married? You go, yeah. How many people did you date before you made the decision to marry this one? And they go, oh, 6 or 7 over the years. I go, how many dates did you have with a salon before you made a choice? You're just the first guy to ask you, you want to work here? Wow, they asked me to work here. Whoop-de-doo. Study, pay a little attention. We ask kids now in some of the schools that I get to visit, not in the Paul Mitchell culture, because we really know what we believe in is the best way. People need a Don King in their life. They need a manager. They need somebody to see for them what is capable in their career. I was in a non-Paul Mitchell beauty school, and a kid says to me, well, I'm going to go rent a booth next week once I graduate. If this is a business that you can only succeed by hanging around the right people, you've just made a choice that's pretty much going to take you out of my industry. I'd give you 2 years. No longer. Mm-hmm. And
if that, I would bet less than that.
That's bad advice, guys, because young kids need mentorship. They need a work ethic. So both of these are putting you into a non-mentorship role and a place where your work ethic could be 2 clients a day. If I see you in 5 years and you turn around and say to me, how long have you been doing hair? I go, 5 years. Not really. You're the Maytag man. You're sitting around most of the time. A kid in my company having 1 year's experience has probably touched more heads of hair than the average guy in a booth rent salon has done in 5 years.
Absolutely.
In fact. So if there's only one way I can tell you as a coach to make you a better hairdresser, by handling as much hair as possible, I would think that would be the craziest advice in the world to come out of beauty school and go rent a stall.
Well, hopefully we've given you lots to think about. And really the underlying message of this, as far as I'm concerned, is that yes, you can. You can be great in beauty. You can be great in the salon industry. And we are all where we're at right now based on our choices in life. And you have a choice as to where you're going to allow your talent to grow, where you're going to position yourself in the beauty industry. I would always say find people from whom you can learn the most.
Robert,
and
thank you.
That involves others. And we're so thrilled to share Robert with you in this recording. And just know that I think it's so important to have heroes in the beauty industry. And we certainly count Robert amongst our heroes.
Well, thank you guys very much.
All right, let's do some afterthoughts.
Well, my first afterthought is that I might have some people who might be questioning what I said earlier about numbers robbing creativity. And what I meant by that is that having to design the mechanism for tracking might rob your creativity. I don't think that hairdressers naturally do well with numbers. I don't think you'll be committed to being involved with numbers or tracking or scorekeeping long term if you're an individual. I think that it's only through leadership and through understanding how looking at the score and keeping score and looking at it daily fuels your creativity and fuels your career and your future. Then it makes sense. That only happens in an environment where, first of all, everybody's doing it, where there's somebody saying, this is what this means, which we say all the time, to the degree that we deliver extraordinary service, the guest will trust us with more of their money. That's why we check the score to see if the guest is trusting us with more of their money. And all of those are things that I don't think happen as an individual. I think they happen when all of a sudden I'm comparing my score to Robert's, and Robert's comparing his score to Terry's or Dawn's or Bud's. That's a team environment. It happens in sports all the time. So I think that you can be intensely creative and still check the scoreboard.
Well, the score you're talking about, though, it's vital signs, just to make sure you're alive and you're making that step toward what you're after. And, you know, so you think of some of the bureaucracy and the type of paperwork could be involved by being an independent business owner. I mean, just knowing in my own salon, if I walk into one of my offices, the amount of paperwork we occur and the stuff that's got to be done to be current with state laws and all this stuff, it's just a whole lot of stuff that I know as my own self, being a hairdresser, it would be stuff I'd be terrible at. And yet I'm the first guy to tell you, you keep score and you do more. These are important features. So it's not really a contradiction. It's just the amount of. the amount of paperwork you'd occur would make it absolutely the worst job in the world, because you're focusing on the thing that's not what sent you to beauty school. And I think, honestly, hairdressers, listen to this. I know we failed math. I bet we did, all of us, because I remember how confused we got when they said a 45-degree angle. We're like, what's 45 degree? If I knew that, I wouldn't be in beauty school to start with. I am saying this. We've got to find, as an industry, a love with numbers. Last time you were in Coaching Our Salon, we've talked about, the ratio of product performance. We've talked about the take-home, dollar per head ratio. And it's funny, in front of my staff, you mention them in just a number of bottles, and suddenly, aha, they got it. 7 bottles. They could see 7 bottles and maybe not see a percentage. So we want to make it easy. We want to give you numbers that inspire you and take you to levels, and at the same time save you getting into things that's like a paper trail, if you will, not important to your creative sense.
Great.
All right, here's what you might be thinking. Couple scenarios, maybe 3. The first one being is you're in a commission salon now. You just made the decision to go be an independent worker, and you've already even given notice to your owner. Now that you've heard this information, you're thinking, oh my goodness, I didn't do enough homework. This is not the right move for me now, after all. What do I do? Well, first thing is, be honest. Robert, you as an owner, if someone came to you and said, you know what, I've just learned some more facts about being a booth runner, and I don't want to do that. Can you support me coming back to the salon or changing my mind?
Oh, absolutely.
That honesty and that kind of conversation with you would be well respected, right?
Absolutely. I feel that people that don't take the opportunity to talk to me about it, to make it sometimes an assumption, it's kind of like in a commission salon. Let's say the bracket's 50%. Everybody's assumption is I'm making the other half. I got overhead. I got different things. You're going to incur these expenses. These hidden things you don't understand are suddenly going to be on your lap.
Mm-hmm. Number 2, second scenario. You might be in a booth rental situation right now, and after hearing this, you want to give commission salon another try into helping your career grow. So what do you do now? Do your homework, think about everything we've talked about during this. And
Make that list.
And I'm sure there's room for you in our industry. Number 3, you're in a booth rental situation right now, and you love it, and you're doing great. Your customers are well taken care of. You're retaining customers. It's a really great working situation for you. What the 3 of us are going to say is, congratulations. You're in the minority, but you're making something really special happen for your customers on a daily basis. Don't change a thing. What else do you 2 want to add?
Well, just one of the things I always use in front of my stuff is just, we look at ourselves as not the boss, but the bus, the vehicle. And I think that's a critical part. We talked about a list of should I stay or should I go now? But let's talk about a list of what do you want out of your industry? What's your ultimate goal? If we live in a world that anything's possible, sit down on a piece of paper and jot out what you think your career could be. I don't believe any of you could be honestly getting the information back if you didn't realize that finding a vehicle to jump on is probably the smartest choice you could make.
We always talk about honoring your craft and honoring your industry. And is where you're working now and the decisions you've made about your working environment doing both of those things for you?
I talk a lot, it's every day we go to work, or you're a step closer to your dream. I think that's really critical. And I think when I look at the benefit of being a part of something, from the little shampoo kid on all the way up to the top of the company, there's so much benefit by hanging around. You made a comment about hair shows. If I didn't have Takashi, Kelly, Steph, these guys there, they're the wall of sound. They're the orchestra. And you take them away, it's like Superman and Kryptonite. I become pretty much powerless. Meaning part of where I can get my walk on, my game on, is I got these boys at my back that I know I'm the most dangerous guy in the industry because of the team. When people celebrate our success, the part that they recognize as being very unusual is the team spirit that we identify with. There are many guys step on a platform that pretend to be a team for that occasion. Don't work together in a salon, don't have any common beliefs. They just gyrate to music and do a dancing hair show. Yahoo! That's a certain thing in our industry. The thing that is so outstanding in our culture, and I think when people see it, they all want it. They're like, I want to be part of that. I want to see myself in this gangland of possibilities. And that's what, and it's not just the top teams that you may recognize like Takash. It's some of the B and C teams that we have traveling on our reputation, Robert Croming Salon. Certain weekends around the country, we may have as many as 3 show teams out. That's 45 young individuals out of my company out doing stuff on behalf of our industry. And every single person falls in love with what they see. It's like the silver screen, and I know what they're loving is the unity. Mm-hmm. And I just think that people in my industry, I seem to understand you because I'm part of it. I've been to beauty school. I went through much of what you've experienced. We are best served as individuals that think like us being part of something, because that unleashes the most potential we'll ever be capable of. When Steve was in recently coaching our team, he said to be perfect as a person is impossible, but to be perfect as a team is quite obtainable. We watch movies like Miracle. Who do you play for? USA. When they say that, it just gives you goosebumps.
Yeah, you think you can skate, don't you?
No, that's never occurred to me.
Okay.
Almost. But I love sometimes those coaching movies where you catch them on that, halftime pep talk, or that's the value of it. And it's not just when everything's on fire and we're fired up and we're sizzling. It's when we're having the hardest times. I know that when I'm on stage and I'm ever having a difficult time, I look over to Takashi. His hands are like magic. I pass it over to Steph or Kelly. I could collapse and fall off and the show would still be a success. How many of us can say that in our professional lives, that if we weren't there today, would it still work without us? That's the great positive effects of being part of something is. I've been part of a culture called Paul Mitchell for 20 years. All my dreams have come true by being part of this culture, celebrating the 1,000 associates I've been able to work with for the last 20 years, having the mentorship from some of the great icons of the industry, all made possible for me simply because I joined and got on JP's bus. So I would be giving you the right advice as a coach to say, you better find a bus to get on and do a little research on this bus. Don't get in the wrong numbered bus because you'd be going the wrong place. Doesn't make much sense. Do a little homework, research it. Compare the list of your dreams to a company that offers a career path and find, no matter where you live, it exists. And I think sometimes our example of what we'd say in our world, providing daycare and all these things, I did it because I want to be the standard of what all salons are going to have to do in the future. I want to put my big size 12 foot on the commission owner's butt too and say, there's things I need of you to make us all honest people. Mm-hmm. That we have to build career path companies that give people reasons to stay for infinite number of years, right down to employee partnerships one day. We got to look at our industry as a whole. So the expectation that we put on our industry, especially the other commission owners, I'm going to lay out a standard. And sometimes I'll talk to commission owners in a business seminar. When I show them the daycare slide, I go, this is for my staff, not for the customer. Every girl in the room would like to work for me. I have young women now who seek out my company because they know we're, first of all, a career path company, but that we see family as being an important feature.
Bud came into work yesterday, and it just so happened that over the weekend we saw the same interview of an author on TV, and we had both remembered the same quote.
Who was it?
Happened to be a gentleman who wrote a book and is Alex Rodriguez of the New York Yankees, his personal coach. One-on-one. He talks to him every single day of the year. He talks to Alex Rodriguez, the highest paid baseball player in the game. And his quote was that a true champion wins before he ever enters the arena. And why I think that fits in this particular CD is that what we've asked of you is to think about and to plan and to know how to define your future in the beauty industry, to look at where you're at, to look at where you want to be, to look at what's required of you, to look at the various arenas that you can play in, whether it be a single chair environment or whether it be a commission-based. And we've spent a lot of time talking about a well-run commission salon. And certainly Robert's presence here is an example of a well-run commission-based salon. But one of the absolute keys of a well-run commission-based salon is that they offer career path and that they offer team environment. And so you might think that we're saying that any commission salon is the end-all be-all, and we're not. There's as many poorly run commission-based salons as there are dead-end, single-chair salon environments or booth rent salons. Know what you want, know where you want to be, and how it's going to feel once you're part of it. The true champion wins before they ever enter the arena. And what we see more often than not in the salon industry is people get a job, they go to work, and then they start looking around. And if they don't find what they like, they find what they don't like. And so it contaminates an environment. And it's really because they had no idea what they really wanted or what to expect. And we say all the time the goal in a career is to have your career full of, I'm glad I did, rather than I wish I woulda. And the only way you do that is by planning.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much for listening.
Thanks, guys.